Hello, this is Ed Spicer at www.spicyreads.org. This is part 2 of my interview with K.T. Horning. Enjoy.
Betty Carter is on record, at least to me anyway, as saying there's no such thing as the perfect book. Have you met a perfect book?
Well, I think Betty Carter may be right. I think a lot will depend on who the reader is. I think I could name you a few books I feel are perfect books for myself, but I'm not sure you would think it was a perfect book.
Okay, what are perfect books for you then?
Well, I really think One Crazy Summer by Rita Williams Garcia came very close to being a perfect book. It's not a perfect book. I think Holes by Louis Sacker was pretty close to perfect. Feed by M.T. Anderson.
Okay, we're 3 for 3. Keep going.
But I also have talked to other people who haven't shared my complete appreciation for those 3 books, and they would have other books they would feel would be perfect. But I also feel like oftentimes books that are slightly flawed.
We'll get to that in just a second. Hold that thought.
No, I think that oftentimes they are really quite interesting for doing, and I really admire authors who are always trying to do something a little different. I really admire I like being part of a profession where people can still experiment with text and with art. And I think we're seeing a lot of creativity and inventiveness in children's and young adult literature, in picture books, in nonfiction. And I think it's very healthy. And if someone tries something new and it doesn't quite work, I still really appreciate that they're trying.
I find myself most deeply conflicted when books have such amazing strengths in one area, say in voice, that I'm tempted to ignore areas in other parts of the book. I care more about voice than plot structure. However, I may not majority with that viewpoint, and I certainly owe it to readers to point out errors. However, I do have this dialogue that says, if you mention the errors, readers may not pick up this book and discover the fabulous award-worthy voice. When an author does something tremendously unique and deeply significant on a topic perhaps unique to children's literature, I want that book to make lists and win awards. Is there ever a time when the strengths in one area are so exceptionally strong that it can make lists or win awards despite a deficiency in other areas? And I'm thinking about books like Anna Hibiscus, which didn't make our notables list, Other Half of My Heart by Fraser, Freak Show by James St. James, and What Bluebirds Do by Kirby.
Well, I want to go back to what you were saying about flaw in a book and a critic's responsibility to point that out. I think you really do have to weigh how important that is in the book overall. When I was on the Newbery committee when Number of the Stars came out, one of the things we discussed in great depth was a specific detail about that time and place and geography. And in the overall scheme of things, in the overall scheme of the book itself, it didn't really matter. You can get so caught up in whether there is a particular species of plant in a particular place, or, I go back to something I heard Sharon Creech once say, when someone questioned whether or not a particular snake would be in the area she was writing about, and she said, of course it was in that area because I'm the author and I put it there. And I think sometimes we have a tendency as critics to want works of fiction to be nonfiction, and certainly you want something to be credible and authentic, but I think it's possible for a story to resonate. Think of M.C. Higgins the Great by Virginia Hamilton. I still like trying to picture this pole that MC was sitting on top of with his bicycle pedals pedaling. And it's such a bizarre sight. It's such a bizarre event out of this author's imagination. Would a boy living in rural Ohio have a huge pole that he would scale and sit on a bicycle seat and pedal? Probably not. But it's such a wonderful image, and it's so memorable. So I think you have to really think about how it works in a book as a whole.
Okay, maybe we'll end with this question. Since you're here with Holly Black, I think fantasy series suffer unfairly on list committees and single book award committees because members often expect a fantasy series to be something it was never meant to be. Often books don't win awards or make lists because members on the committees expect the book to stand on its own, which ignores the genre conventions and the genre history. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right about that in terms of needing to stand on its own. For the award terms for the Newbery, that actually is
stated.
I don't know that it's specifically those terms, but they cannot consider books published in previous years or other books by the same author. So if you're reading book 3 in a trilogy, you can't, and if it doesn't make sense to people who haven't read books 1 and 2, it's really, really hard to make a case for that book. If it really did require them to read the first and second book, I think the answer is if you want fantasy works or any kind of work that are part of a sequence to have equal footing and equal chance to win an award like the Newbery Medal, I think that you need to talk to the ALSC board about changing those terms, changing that terminology.
Yeah, so different wording.
I can completely understand the rationale for only being able to consider the books of that year, because you can't expect everyone on the committee to have exactly the same reading experience unless you expect them all to have read the same books in that year. But it also gives a first-time author an equal chance as an author like Katherine Patterson, who has written so many books and is so well known. On the other hand, it also gives the author who's really well known an equal chance, because you're not saying this is the best Katherine Patterson book, or you're not saying, well, you know, such and such author has never won before, it's her turn. You know, that all is out of the picture. So that all plays into it. But I think you make a really good point that if all the genres are to have equal standing, that's something that maybe they need to work out in the terms, in terms of being able to consider books that are part of a sequence.
Okay, K.T. Horning, thanks for appearing on www.spicyreads.org. Any recommendations to leave viewers with as we say goodbye of books this year that we should look for?
Books this year. I actually really liked Blink and Caution by
I love that book. We can talk about that.
Yeah, I thought that
down
one,
at the Tiki.
that's one of the books that's really stood out.
It's an ESP
so
contender. You know, do you have the ESP awards at your center?
ESP? No.
Yeah, that's the Ed Spicer Personal Book Award.
We'll have to make a file for it.
Okay, I can give you the history. It starts out with Fly Away Home by Eve Bunting.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed Blink and Caution. And there have been a lot of really great picture books this year. I really like A Ball for Daisy by Chris Rochka. Have you seen that book?
Yes,
Wordless picture book. Press Here is a really interesting book. I was just sharing that with a group of teachers yesterday at a convention in Madison, and they're very excited about that book. They just think it's so funny, and they can't wait to share that with kids. So, you know, those are some of the few books that come to my mind.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
That was K.T. Horning, author of From Cover to Cover, with me, Ed Spicer, on www.spicyreads.org. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Thanks for stopping by.